This is a Flying Cow production. Well, hello and welcome to the FCL Flashback here on the Flying Cow. This, of course, is the show where I talk to people who were involved with the first class league, the FCL, back a couple years ago now. And we talk about what was, what might have been, and what is now. So, of course, those of you that are watching live on the feed can tell that my guest today is the Dynasty himself, David Campbell. David, how are you?
Fantastic. It's weird always to talk to someone stateside because you are like beginning your day in the middle of your day. I'm at the end of my day. It's acceptable for me to be drinking at this hour. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's 4 o'clock here on a weekend. I mean, I don't have anything right now, but I'm just saying I don't think anybody should judge if I did. But yeah. All right, but yeah, David, you and I have actually talked a little bit outside of the FCL. You've actually helped me out a couple of times on movie battles and some other stuff. So, the difference, some of my other past guests, like I haven't talked to outside of the FCL. Some of them I hadn't talked to since our last match.
Yeah.
But you and I have talked a little bit about this stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's going to be fun to dive into, I think, the specifics of the FCL. And like you say, I think it always hits me. You said it there, like it's been years now. Like it doesn't feel like that long, like since we were last like in the arena.
Yeah, I mean, we started. I didn't debut until June of 2021. So, but the FCL itself started, I think, late March.
I think I got a Facebook memory notification, an Instagram memory notification of me plugging the match with Cooper, which was on the Cooper Barnes on the first event. And I met Cooper the other day. I was like, oh my God, it's been 2 years since that match. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. I will say, we'll kind of get into like how you got into the FCL, but I will say Cooper Barnes, your first match, we never saw him again.
I know. And I think that's criminal because he was so likable. Even my pals were mailing me like, he was so charming. I was rooting for him by the end of it.
Yeah. No, he was great. And I mean, you could tell he actually had some decent knowledge. I mean, you guys' match, if I remember correctly, came down to the fives.
Yeah.
So
he didn't answer his 5. I think it was on Hardball. The Keanu Reeves movie.
Yeah, that's tough.
That was tough. I didn't know the answer at the time. I can reveal that now because I'm not playing anymore.
Oh yeah, no. Honestly, that's one of the nice things about this is I can be completely honest about the things that I don't know, the things that I'm shit at. The things that I'm just like, first episode, both Kat and I commiserated over the fact that we don't know directors. No. Directors were never a thing that I knew well. In fact, they weren't even a thing I really thought about until I started watching the Schmodown and competed in the FCL. Yeah. So, yeah,
Well, we always had a thing in the European invasion study sessions. We'd end up calling him Red Robbie, Robert Redford. Like, I don't think any of us landed a single Robert Redford question sometimes.
Oh, that's great.
But we were always feeding that wheel slice coming up. We're like, if it's Robert Redford, we are screwed.
Because I think that season was when they introduced the Paul Newman, Robert Redford slice.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, like, I probably could have gotten, like, some of his older, like, more classic films. Mm-hmm. But, like, you get into Robert Redford deep cuts or especially just the ones that he directed.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Quiz Show. That's about it.
and we always said he's very much like America's like favorite actor. And it's like, we're not Americans.
You're not American.
Like, we don't understand. We don't have the same reverence. Like, I get I'm a good actor, you know what I mean? But like, that seemed to be the Robert Redford category when we looked at it. We're like you say, there was so much depth in that I was like, I don't want to wade into that puddle. Like,
yeah. All right. So I do kind of want to talk about, and I know a lot of the people that were introduced before myself and Brennan kind of all had a similar story. I think most of you guys were part of the potential Schmodown draft. Was that for you as well?
Yeah, I was in the draft. I sent in the audition tape, and I wasn't expecting to get in the draft, if I'm honest with you, because like I didn't have like an online presence, so to speak. Like I wasn't involved in the community or anything like that. But managed to, with my audition, where they asked you to call out someone in the Schmodown. For some reason, I decided to call out Shannon Barney. I was like, I knew that I was going to be good at cutting promos, so I was just like, who is the best person in the Schmodown right now to cut a promo with? And it would have been the Queen Shannon Barney at that point.
Oh, so if you guys had gotten in like a promo war on Twitter, that would have been epic.
Can you imagine?
Oh my god!
These are the dream scenarios that I could have booked. But I ended up getting into the draft, did a bunch of shows, and I knew Christian was high on me at a point because in SEN Live he like name checked me, and I was like so happy about that. I was like, oh my god, I listen to this show every day, and he's happy. But it came down to I had talks with Winston for Swag, Kaiser as well, and then it didn't happen. Kaiser went for Chris Jericho. God knows why. Then,
that really. I mean, that move really fucked everything up. You know, it really in like every because he had a player on his team that he couldn't use. Chris Jericho wouldn't play for him, so therefore wasn't playing for the Schmodown. So it really like screwed over. And Roxy, after doing that, she had a full roster, so she wasn't going to trade for him.
Yeah, she was happy. Like, and I remember Coy mailing me the day after the draft as well. Yeah. And he said, mate, I was so close to picking you, but I had to get both real rejects, he said. And I was like, I kind of wish you hadn't said that, because now I know how close it came to like actually happening. Yeah. You know?
Well, and I know like Kat mentioned that at a time there was a little bit of confusion. Like I think she said that, or Kat said at one point that Christian said that international people wouldn't be eligible for titles.
Yes.
So I know that a lot of people were a little, uncertain about that. And I think at one point that changed, but that probably didn't help. Even if he went back on that, that was probably still in a lot of the managers' minds that 100%. It might be difficult for him to get the title if he wins and all that kind of good stuff.
Well, Roxy said that on the show, like with the SEN Live when Christian said, man, Roxy was like, oh, but he's international, so it's difficult and stuff. So we know that was in their heads. But the way I look at it is there's few rookies, like I have your Adam Collins stories aside, that are going to go for the championship that
in their
quickly.
First. Yeah.
Anyway, like my matches would have been against other rookies, and I was really gunning for a match with Radis before getting drafted, because I was like, if I can set something up with another rookie, which is the smart thing to do, because that's the people you're going to be playing against, and you want to build your generation of the Schmodown around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that was the way I approached it. So I was like, look, if I can make myself a commodity on this level, the rookies coming in, and make that the most entertaining scene in the Schmodown, that would have been my goal at the time. But alas, was not to be, and we got what we got in the end.
Yeah. So I mean, we've mentioned it before, in the first FCL 1, the main event. Yeah. So like, tell me, like, first of all, like the process of, was it immediately after the draft that you were aware, but the FCL is coming and, you're going to be a part of that? Or did that take a little while? Like, walk us through kind of you finding out about the FCL, being in the FCL, and then like your first match kind of thing?
So Christian told me about it. He said, "Don't be down on the draft. Something's coming, and I want you involved in it."
Yeah.
So I knew something was coming, and then the email started to go out after that, and one thing came to another, and somehow I was going to be in the first main event against Cooper Barnes, Nickelodeon star, 2 million Instagram followers, and I was like, "Oh dear God!"
Yeah, right.
And I remember going into that match being incredibly nervous in the lead up to it, because it's the first time I've done anything like on that scale. Like, look at the guy I'm going up against, brings the following and stuff. And also, it was working out what the character was as well. At that point, like, I remember talking to, I think it was PLD over email, and he was like, "Right, we want you to be a face." And I was like,
I remember we talked about this.
Yeah.
You really, and honestly, I could see it in your promos.
Yeah.
You wanted to kind of be the big, like, knowledgeable heel.
I wanted to be an arsehole. And they say that your character the best characters are 10 times you. Like, when I get in a game or a competitive setting, I can't help myself sometimes with a bit of trash talk and a bit of, mischievousness, and that is what I saw him bringing to it. But then PLD and the team hit back with, "Well, we want you to be a babyface with a bit of an edge." And then I think it made sense. The problem with the Cooper match, character-wise for me, was that I was going up against a literal superhero.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's my only thing about them wanting you to be a face, is your first match is against Cooper Barnes, who is, I mean, yes, exactly. I mean, in several different forms of the word, he is a face.
Yeah.
And so, it's odd that they were so set on you being a face when he was your first opponent.
I think it was Brad's sort of vision for me to go in and sort of punk or Austin-esque style to the character and have that edge.
Here's the thing, and you and I talked about this once before. Honestly, the way I saw your character is that you would have started as a heel and then kind of worked into that babyface role because Punk, Austin, they both started as heels.
Yeah.
And then the audience couldn't deny them, and they just loved they still, their personas were still heel-ish.
Yes.
But they were baby faces because the audience was just behind them. And I always saw you that way. So I
agree with that, but also it was early doors. There gets to a point where PLD and Brad and Dwayne and the whole team, they're the ones in charge of this. And in some ways, like when I'm being creative, I get a bit sort of control freaky. I know I can get that way, and I have a bunch of ideas and what to go. But with those guys, I was always very respectful that they are the ones in charge. They know what's coming down from the powers that be. They know what's good for the big picture. So I tried to make it work as much as I could in the Cooper match, and I think it worked quite well. I thought it was quite a good debut for the character, but also play-wise, I played quite well that match. Had a good time, and won in the end. So there was no complaints about the way I made my debut, because I got to go up against a high-profile guy, play well, get interrupted by the Flouse in the post-match interview.
Yeah.
So it was a fun time all round. It was a good night.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think I even mentioned it in the post interview of our match. You kind of were one of the first big names in the FCL. Yeah. I know that a lot of people expected you to be in the first championship match. I mean, obviously the matches didn't play out that way. That's just kind of the way, but that's just kind of, we all expected you to be on that trajectory based on the way that you had played and, everything like that. But yeah.
And it didn't work out, but that's what, and present company aside, but that's what makes the Nick match my favorite match in the FCL that I did.
Sure.
Because you had this guy in me who was you know what wrestling's like. He's the baby face. He's the one who's coming in. I'm for the fans and stuff like that. Yeah. And then you have Nick Harley, who is what we're talking about, and that he is a heel. He's a nasty man, but he makes you laugh every single time he's on screen.
Personality-wise, that match was so, like, the epitome of what the FCL needed to be.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you know, because, you know, nothing against some of the people that were less, you know, character-oriented, but, you know, we definitely had some that were a little less focused on the character, but the two of you were, as you said, you know, even though, yes, you had that edge, but you were definitely a fan favorite. You were that baby face. And then you had Nick, who, you know, playing that old spoiler character, you know, and what was interesting is that going into that match based on because I think Nick had only had like one match before you.
Yeah, both of us had our first matches before that one. Okay. And then we went into that. So I believe that Nick beat John Knight. If I'm correct in saying.
And I believe, honestly, I think that this was the case in most of Knight's matches, that he would get in the lead and then like lose it at the last minute. So I remember thinking, oh, David's got this. Just because, you know, Nick's first match, he had a couple of stumbles. You know, obviously he showed us later on that he deserved to be in the position that he was in. Yeah. But, you know, going into this only second match, I just, you know, based on the previous matches was like, oh, David's got this. And then 100%. It was a much harder match than I had anticipated it to be.
And me and Nick knew that we wanted to do something because it's like, whoever wins, we should both come out of this looking better than we have going in.
Absolutely.
And what helped was we were given a lot of time to do that.
Sure.
Which was something we didn't really get going forward in the FCL, like in terms of having long things that carried out over a certain number of weeks. Like, I remember
because half the time we would get told like 2 weeks before, hey, you're having this match.
This is happening. Yeah, exactly.
In fact, I when I was looking back at this, I realized there were literally only 2 weeks between my match with Wingblade and my match with you.
Yeah,
I was like, oh wow, this was faster than I remember.
Exactly. But like with that one, it was like I did a promo on him, he did a promo on me. We did a contract signing segment as well, which was my favorite promo segment I ever did in the FCL. Yeah. It looks like I'm about to explode on screen, like in that moment. Yeah. Nick, in the lead up to it, also did the funniest thing on Twitter. It's like a 10-second video. It's just him and his friends in a bar, and it's just him saying, and then he said, I'm doing it for the fans, and they all burst out laughing like evil villains, like Dr. Evil in his group. And like, I remember getting tagged in it and seeing it and just bursting out laughing. I was
great.
This is the most villainous man I've ever seen in my life, and it's gorgeous to look at. But that's what made it, and I credit Nick with what we're talking about. I didn't know what the character was the first match.
Sure.
That feud with Nick really helped me find who the character was, what I was going to be, and it was because it was in opposition to him. So whatever the result of that match was, I came out of it knowing who the Dynasty character was going to be going forward.
Right, and as you said, people that were rooting for you that much more after that because they were like, oh, it's a setback, but he's going to come back. He's going to, you know, and I was among them at that time. I was like, he's going to come back. He's going to get a title shot. I know it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the kicker in that match because you have the entertainer in you wants to do the good promo and the good story, and then it's like the yin and yang. You also have the competitor in you who's thinking, if only I'd remembered Richard Linklater, if only I'd gotten that 2-pointer, you know. Like the thing is, I span Wizard and World in that match again, so I can't really complain. But
Well, I mean, that's what I always thought was so interesting about the Schmodown in the FCL is that it was such a mix between theatricality and like straight up just, I mean, because you can give the best promos and the best, but if you don't have the knowledge on the day, you're not progressing. And it's like, that's a weird kind of,
it's
line.
Total dichotomy. It's a total dichotomy. And I think it's knowing how to pivot it. Like, I think that's what they did great. If you look at the Schmodown with Andrew Guy, he ended up becoming sort of more behind the scenes manager and then eventually on the desk.
Right.
It's knowing how to sort of use people and when the time to sort of switch things up and freshen it up is. And I looked at that. We'll talk about it later on, but going into season 2 of the FCL, I was thinking, like, what would there be to do? Like, how do we make this a bit different,
Right. Yeah. I mean, we're definitely going to talk about, what might have been, unfortunately. But, I do want to add, do you remember how many matches did you have?
5.
Okay. Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. So I was
2
thinking
and
that
3.
you had at least 6.
No, I was 2 and 3. So I had the match with Cooper, then Nick. Then I lost to Vanessa.
Okay.
And then, which was great to work with Vanessa Fitzsimmons, like, as well.
Yeah.
Showdown legend. Like, I was like brilliant. And that was a big match. And then
I actually got to meet her and Robert on a live stream not long ago. And I told them, I was like, I know this is going to sound really weird, but I was sitting there and I was like, oh, it's Vanessa and Robert from, I could not think of the name of their channel. I was like, how can I not think of the, I mean, obviously now it's late to the party, but I was like, I remembered your names, but I could not think of the name of your channel.
The channel. And that's, like, I knew them as the late to the party before I knew. Like, I was a fan of Schmodown for years before getting into the FCL. I'd watch every single match up until that point. So it was good to face Vanessa. And then before you, it was me and the Ghost Gallego went head to head, which was where I got to challenge twice in one match. Which I
remember tweeting you about this match because I was like, I am so glad that you challenged that Harry Potter question because I was about to jump out of my skin. I was like,
there's anyone who's going to know that the answer was wrong. It's me. I was like, I didn't think this was how we were going to challenge me in the Wizarding World category. Was literally by putting wrong answers in there for me to have to challenge. Because the thing is, that match could have went so differently because I challenged a round 1 question, which was, and the answer was Zombieland double tap.
And he said Zombieland 2.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's so risky because it depends who's on the desk that day, to be honest, if they give that decision.
Honestly, when you did that, I was like, crap, because I would have said the same thing. I actually didn't remember the subtitle for that.
100%. I was and it's one of those strategy plays in the Schmodown that's like, if I was playing the babyface totally, I shouldn't challenge that because it's like...
See, honestly, there has to be a balance between babyface personality and gameplay because, at a certain point, I even told Brennan when he came on, which, by the way, he's in the chat for us today, as are, I believe this is Sonny's handle, but still, Cat and Sonny.
The legends.
Absolutely.
Legends.
We speak their names and they appear. I mentioned to Brennan that my plan going into that match, if he had gotten opponent's choice, was to choose Black Cinema for him. Because I just knew that across the board, that was kind of it was new, and it was a harder category for a lot of people. But when I spun opponent's choice and he didn't give that to me, I felt we had entered a gentleman's agreement. So I chose to give him something that I felt I could do good at as opposed to something that he might do bad at. So there is a balance. I mean, gameplay, that probably wasn't the best decision.
Exactly.
But and I mean, at that point, they hadn't told me if they wanted me to be. Honestly, I actually went into that thinking that I'd probably be a babyface just because I was so silly.
Yeah.
But that coupled with the fact that I actually mentioned to Shimo, oh, I think it would be fun to be in the Sinister Syndicate while everybody's standing there, played into the fact that they made me a heel. Yeah,
but you were a complete force of nature, is what I would say about your character. Like I've always said that about your character coming in. You were just a complete force of nature, like it's something totally different to what anyone else was bringing.
That was my goal, because I also entered a video for the Schmodown draft.
Yeah,
I did not get a call, and I was surprised because I felt like mine was so unique and so. And I just assumed, from Christian's wrestling background, that it might be something that he'd latch onto. I will say, though, I think he's less of a fan of that colorful 80s stuff than I was, which is definitely more in the realm of what the Flying Cow is. I mean, yes, I tried to give it kind of like a silly, sinister tone as well, like an odd, dark, silly darkness to it.
Yeah.
But, I think it was a little bit more on the silly side than he preferred.
Yeah, probably.
And when I did my FCL promo, I flat out called out Brad. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna shoot my shot here, and I'm gonna call out Brad. I'm gonna say that the Schmodown's afraid of me, all this kind of stuff. And I ended up.
How many of us wanted to call out Brad though? Like, I would have loved to have a match with Mr. Gilmore like that. Like, you know what I mean? I think in the back of our minds, we're all thinking everyone wanted to face Vince McMahon. Everyone wants to face Brad Gilmore.
Why do you think I kept calling him Bradward? I was waiting. He gave me a little something the first time I did it. After that, he gave me no reaction, and I was like, "Come on, Brad, you got to play with that a little bit.
Let's play with it here." I know. But yeah, I think we're talking about it there as well. Just like the group of people we had in the FCL at that time, like naming all these names, seeing the names pop out up there. Like I can say this, like I had me, Sonny and Kat caught up a couple of weeks ago. We've been zooming since like the league ended. Like those two pairing up with them in the European invasion, like that's friends for life right there. Like honestly, really great people. And really good to have that support network around as well.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about it with Kat, and they talked about how we had obviously the Sinister Syndicate and the European invasion. There really only I think the Flouse was kind of had like a small little faction with Andrew, but we were really the only two factions.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, they kept pairing us up against each other. Yeah. And I mean, I will say, unfortunately, we kept coming out on the winning end of that.
Yeah. You can't win it all the time.
Yeah. But I was like, I really wanted it to be kind of a rivalry. I know. I mean, we'll get into season 2 in a little bit, but I know that there were some possibilities for more to happen in season 2, and it just obviously didn't get to happen. But
it would have been so good, because when you look at the factions as well and the characters, like it's babyface and heel, but it's also a lot of just screwballs going up against each other. Because by that point, I'd descended into sort of angry man. Kat is the man.
That's the thing. That's the thing. The combination of you three was so funny, especially eventually. I think you guys announced Nazette about the same time that we announced Maxwell. Yeah. So unfortunately, none of them really got to be part of our faction, at least not in a playing sense.
Yeah.
That is true. That is, I gotta say, that is true, Sonny. And I mentioned on my episode with Kat that I would have loved to play Sonny, but not in Star Wars.
No,
not in Star Wars.
Anyone?
No.
Sonny, if we're being real, it's like I all respect to the Star Wars champion at the time, but in that first Star Wars match, 9 times out of 10, Sonny wins that title match. It was the 1 out of 10 that he didn't.
Yeah,
that
that was a rough one.
Oh,
yeah.
I know it killed him. It killed all of us at the time because, like,
honestly, I thought Sonny had it. I really did. Watching that, I was sure. Again, because having seen JC's previous match, I felt like Sonny's knowledge was stronger, but it just so happened on the day.
Yeah,
I mean, it's the same. It was the same thing when Maxwell played. I can't remember in the number one contenders match.
Yes, Alex.
When he played Alex in that match, I was like, "There's no way Maxwell loses this," and he just happened to get 1 or 2 questions that he just couldn't pull.
Didn't know, and that's what's great. That was great about the game. It was like some days you're hitting 10 out of 10s, perfect rounds, the sun is shining, and then other days you're like, I don't know what this movie is. I haven't heard of it before. And I would say that Sonny was always really good for that. Like, Sonny would ask me questions sometimes in training sessions, and I'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I have no idea.
But I just, I always loved the combination of the 3 because Sonny was the eternal optimist. Then you had Kat that was, as they said, playing like a mad scientist. And then you were kind of like almost like not quite turning heel, but like getting on the edge there of kind of your like, okay, I'm sick of losing, I'm, kind of thing. And so it was an odd combination, but you guys still all worked well together. And I thought that it was, especially with those 3 different personalities kind of coalescing. I don't know if you watched any of the link that I sent you of our match, but there is a scene between the 3 of you. And it's so fun because at the end, you and Kat maniacally laugh. And Sonny's just like, oh, this again. Okay, I'll see you guys later. It's great. Great stuff.
Oh, we loved, and I think what comes to it, we were the type of faction, like 2 of us could turn heel. 1 could stay face.
Anytime,
It would probably still make sense, which is weird to say, but it was because you could tell, like, the closeness of the relationship, I think, permeated onto the screen. Like, we all worked well together. We met up every week for the best part of our year. Like, we knew each other's game inside and out,
So did that pairing just happen organically? Like, you guys were already hanging out, or did somebody, like, did PLD or somebody suggest it? Or, like, how did the European invasion actually come to be?
I actually can't remember. Like, to be honest, like, I have a really good memory when it comes to this sort of thing. I think the 3 of us just got to talking, and I think it was more going to be study sessions. And I think it actually just started as study sessions because we're in the same time zone.
I was about to say, you guys were really the only ones in the same time zone. Yeah.
So we started studying together. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I think we mailed the league and we're like, hey, we're studying together. Makes sense. Can we just be a faction?
Well, there goes one of my questions for our interview, Sonny. Yeah, he can't remember either.
I think that's it. So I think we started studying together, like you say, organically happened, and we said to the league, like, I think we made a point of name dropping each other at the end of matches and interviews, saying, like, thanks to Sonny and Kat for helping me, like, studying this one, just to try and lay the groundwork, set the scene, plant the seeds, and then if the league wanted to go with it, they would. And then that's where the European invasion came in as an on-screen unit, as a presence.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I thought you guys were a fun combination. I wish that obviously we had gotten more of it. But to pivot, earlier we were talking about unexpected results to matches. So that brings us right into our match.
You're selling yourself too short.
Honestly, I think because I got the email about our match, I think like a day after my Wingblade match. And I was like, I just got beaten by Wingblade. And you guys want me to play David Campbell. I was like, you guys aren't going to take it. Because, we had talked about, we want to get you back into singles. We just need to
Yeah.
find a good storyline reason to make it happen, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, honestly, I had a bunch of different scenarios in my head.
Yeah.
You know, I was really hoping at some point to play Andrew Furtado because
I'll say something
who
later.
didn't want to play Andrew Furtado? Because just his you know, the fun that he had, the thoughts, the storylines that man came up with were phenomenal. But, you know, I just thought it would be great for me to be playing this character who had just turned dark, and Andrew in this kind of like, you know, like terrified mode that he played so well, for me to like totally just intimidate the shit out of him, I thought would have been hilarious.
It would have been so funny. It reminds me of, there was a wrestling feud, Booker T and the Boogeyman, and it kind of sounds like that.
Yeah, something like I'd already started playing with some, you know, like some quick cuts. So I had played with this thing where I would do like my flying cow bit, while at the same time an image overlaid of me just kind of staring at the screen. Yeah. And it would just flicker back and forth between the two. I was like, that would have been awesome. That would have freaked him out, and it would have been great.
It would have been so terrifying. And Andrew, like, we'll get into it in a bit later because you're going to ask me what I wanted to do for season 2. And he plays a big... You will be stunned when I tell you the lengths I went to try and do something. But back to the match at hands with her.
Yeah. So, you know, getting into our match, when they told me, you know, I seriously told PLD, I was like, you're not going to take it easy on me, are you? And he's like, this one work. And I was like, okay, all right. So I did. I studied, and, you know, was it this match or one? It was either this match or the previous match. We didn't get our wheel until like the day before or something like.
We got it really late.
Really late. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, to what we were getting it. Then
I was about to say my first match, I got it like I think the weekend before. Like I had almost an entire week to look at that wheel. And ours, I think it was like the day before, if not like that morning. It was pretty late. And so, you know, I had already come up with my promo for when you beat me. You actually, you know, messed me up by because
I apologize.
I know, right?
I'm sorry.
But you know, you and I, because you know, we reached out to, you know, Kat kind of set the tone. Anytime after, you know, because in my match with Kat, they reached out to me, and, you know, we talked about what we were going to do in our promos. So I was like, this is a brilliant idea. If for nothing else, you know, then just to kind of, because, you know, we saw what could be done with promos. Yeah. You know, with Andrew and Knight. That was, those promos were brilliant.
100%.
You know, so, you know, I felt like you and I could do something, you know, different, but a similar type of thing. So,
and I thought it was a really good promo. Our pre-match promo was really good, and it comes down to, I always reached out to who I was playing before the match, because I think it's always good to talk before, because you're playing and you want to win, but also we're all trying to make something together. Like the FCL was the little league that could. We're trying to build it up. Like we're all in the same boat, all in the same team. But also it makes the editor's job easier if we have, what's the theme here? What is the story going into this match?
Right.
You know? And I think we figured that out. You watched the promo, and we both referenced that you'd already beaten Kat, and this is the continuation of that feud.
Yeah, because I mean, that was the whole reason that the match was allowed to take place, is that it was kind of a grudge match. You were wanting to avenge Kat's loss, and you know, that's how I, you know, got into the singles division kind of thing. But you know, something that you and I are both old school wrestling fans. Yeah. So I mentioned, you know, I had been listening at that point to the Arn Anderson podcast. And I had been re-listening to a lot of those Ole and Arn promos, which are, if you are a wrestling fan, watch some old Arn and Ole promos, because like there's nothing flashy about them, but they're just so good, because they're just straight up. I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm going to do. This guy's good, but he's not as good as me, and I'm gonna prove it to him. I'm gonna beat him so bad that nobody else is going to question, kind of thing. And it was
100%.
just that lay down. And so obviously I'm the flying cow, so I'm gonna be much more flashy. But I wanted to kind of incorporate that kind of no holds barred. He's good, but I'm gonna honestly, I can't think of any other, pun not intended, but put him out to pasture.
100%. And that's what you said. Your whole thing was this going to be the downfall of the dynasty. And that was, in hindsight, if we're going to go into season 2, that was a fucking fantastic line, because it meant if I lost, there's your story. The downfall of the dynasty. He's down at the bottom. He's now
at the end of season 1.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Is it just me, or did this storyline not scream to be part of Warfare?
Yeah, I think
I was like, I know it's like 2 weeks before, but seriously, guys, you should have held on to this one
if there was a time. So PLD, God bless that man, that I would text him and send him ideas like no one's business, because I work in TV development now. You know what I mean? Ideas are my thing. I can't help but have these brainwaves sometimes of I pitched them. There was talk in the Schmodown for years of doing a Survivor Series style match, and I had pitched this idea of how to do it, and the mechanics of it, and this is what we want to do. Let's do European invasion. Let's do the
Syndicate. That would have been the way to do it. Yes.
Yeah, and it was it's right here. We have these, and you could do it you'd beaten us to that point. So the story should have been, if the European invasion loses, the European invasion disbands, and that is what that. Can you imagine the hype?
I don't know that I would have wanted to win that match, though. That's the problem. I would have been like, ooh. I mean, good stakes, but I don't know that I want to be responsible for that, man.
Well, it's all the thing in hindsight, Clay, because I remember at the end of this match and going into this match, I've been very open in the past about struggles with mental health and stuff like that, and that week leading up to our match was one of the worst weeks. It was a bad week for me, and it's one of those things that I think a lot of people took for granted in competitors in the FCL and the MTS. These aren't robots. They aren't athletes. We're not getting paid millions of pounds and have the greatest doctors and vet in the world around us. We're just people living our day-to-day lives, and then we come in and do these stories and play movie trivia matches.
Yeah.
So sometimes it was, and especially I think for us, the character guys as well, it's tough to be on character and then on in performance when you're having a bad day or a bad week, And I think that's the thing, you've said about watching this match back, and I said at the time I wished I gave you better, because I think that we had a great story, and for me, I didn't feel I held up my end of the bargain in the match at times,
Sure.
And so that was, a big regret of mine losing the FCL.
I told you before we started recording that, I did go back and rewatch this. And I think I'd only seen it right after on Twitch, because unfortunately this was one of the ones that didn't make it to YouTube.
Yeah.
But the match is not as bad as I remember at the time.
In the head,
I mean, part of it was, and I'm not trying to start any beef or anything. I'm not going to name any names, but there was one particular player in the comments basically being like, oh, I can't believe they missed that. Oh, I can't. Oh, this is ridiculous. I know all of this. And I was just and part of my reason for being annoyed at that is I had watched this competitor's matches and they had missed things that I thought were easy. So it's it's just perspective,
I know.
So it's one of those things that it's it might seem easy to you, but that's a movie that I've never seen.
100%. And also,
yeah.
it's on the day. Like, it's the I can forgive myself missing movies that I don't know. But
Yeah.
what frustrated me about that game was my gameplay, because I always thought I was good at the gameplay element of matches and tactics.
Sure.
But that game, I didn't take a repeat for I Know What You Did Last Summer. I remember that, like it's
Yeah,
Claimant's
because
Day
you still had
yesterday.
all 3 of your repeats at
And
the
I didn't
end.
use it, but that's where
Yeah.
my head was. And then I didn't listen to the full question in round 2 with that was the preacher, and I think I said Philip Seymour Hoffman because I'm thinking preacher must be the master, and then it was like in
Yeah.
Magnolia, and I didn't listen to that bit. I was like,
Ah,
because I studied Paul Thomas Anderson so hard for the Nick Harley match because I knew he was a
sure.
Paul Thomas Anderson fiend. Like,
Yeah.
so it's like it's that was what annoyed me. But it's interesting you talk about the comments and stuff like that. Like, I'd love to say I was someone who didn't read comments or listen to them or let them get to me.
Here's
But
the thing. I've read comments in all of my matches. They were
yeah,
always positive.
mm-hmm.
You know, they were
Yeah,
always, that was the one time that I remember. And honestly, I think it was really only 1, maybe 2 people making those types of comments.
yeah,
Everybody else was like, ooh, tough match, or, you know, things like
yeah,
that, you know,
exactly.
positive. Even the after shows were positively spinning the way,
Yeah.
because I don't think anybody, except for maybe those 2 people in the comments, thought the match was as bad as we did at the time.
Or thought that was the best that both of us could have done as well. I think people knew that both of us were better than we maybe showed in that match. And big shout outs to the after shows. No beef with the after shows. Like we talked about,
great.
Like this week in the FCL, fans view the gold standard. Like they were all part of building the league up to what it was, and the personalities on there, and giving people airtime and continuing this community around the FCL. So big love to those guys, everyone involved in those shows, because it was great. But the big one, I remember going onto Reddit after the Nick Harley match, the Showdown Reddit.
Oh, see, I never looked at the Reddit.
And the first post I saw, Clay, I kid you not, David Campbell exposed all in capital letters.
Oh my
And someone had just written like a 4-paragraph post about, you all thought this guy was good, here's why he's shit.
Because he is. Oh my God. Jeez.
He only knows Harry Potter. He's wrong.
Wow. Wow.
And I remember my pals still talk about that to this day.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like I'll say something that's like factually incorrect, or just like David Campbell exposed.
Exposed. Jeez. That's crazy. I will say, and I think I mentioned it to you before we started recording.
Yeah.
Rewatching this, I would have gotten all of those round 1 questions except for one.
What was it?
Well, I realized I would have gotten to it, but I would have gotten to it too late. The Black Swan, the one that you did actually verbally kick yourself about, and it just, number one, thriller is such a broad term that I'm like, what are they calling a thriller?
Yes.
You know, because
would you say it's a thriller?
I mean, I could see why they would describe it as a thriller.
Yeah.
I would probably call it more a psychological drama.
Yes.
But thriller, okay, I mean, I knew the moment I wrote down Jupiter Ascending it was wrong, but more of one of my big rules, I hated empty boards.
Yeah.
So I was and I knew I knew that it came out before 2010. So I knew it was wrong, but I was just like, I need something. And I was like, I guess you could describe it as a thriller. It's an odd sci-fi, mess, but an interesting mess, but a mess. I knew it wasn't right, but rewatching, I was like, oh yeah, I know that now. And I'm like, I don't know if I remember that because I got it wrong in this match or because I just know more now.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It was one of those ones where, like you say, round 1 was what it was.
Yeah.
I think round 1's always the hardest round. And that sounds stupid to say. But because it's 8 different categories, you don't know and you can't really prepare for.
It's so broad. So broad.
You're always just like, sometimes I'm not going to get, like, the Page Master came up. And I think it was in the Vanessa match, or was it this match? It was this match or the Vanessa match, right? It
wasn't this match because I would have I would have jumped on the Page Master. I
Didn't know the
remember
movie, never seen the movie.
I was
never
gonna say
heard
I
of
don't
the
know
movie.
if it was big enough to get to you guys. It was a
Yeah.
small film. I mean, yeah, it had Macaulay Culkin and Christopher Lloyd, but it was not a big film.
Yeah, exactly. And that was one where I was like, that's one of those round one questions where I'm like, damned if we know this, you know what I mean? But yeah, I think the big thing to take away from that match and the 5 matches before it, and the thing that I cherish most about the FCL was just the personalities that were involved. So not only like the competitors I faced and coming away with like a good relationship with sort of everyone, and everyone had a good time and everyone sort of was good for the matches, but also just be on there and be like Brad and Steph were great every match. They were there. PLG and Dwayne, like everyone involved, and getting to be part of that FCL family, like every time you competed was just a joy. Like, to be honest, you know.
Yeah, no, it was some great stuff. You know, I don't want to spend too much time on the match, but I do want to quickly talk about round 2. You already mentioned the Paul Thomas Anderson. I will say, when you took Paul Thomas Anderson, I was like, good luck to you. Because honestly, that wheel, when I got that wheel, I was like, there's not a lot on here that I'm super confident about. It was kind of a tough wheel.
Did I put Wizarding World on that wheel?
No.
Right.
Which I was going to ask you, do you remember what you put on? I'm trying to pull it up right now.
I remember being so cheeky that I wanted to put Disney on against you. Like,
okay, I put Disney on that wheel.
Right.
Right.
So what would I put on then?
I don't know. I've actually got the categories here. So we had Paul Thomas Anderson,
right?
The 2000s, Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah,
Quentin. Okay. See, Quentin was one that I was like, unless they go like super like detailed, I'll probably do all right with Quentin Tarantino. Obviously, Disney was mine. I think honestly, the category that I felt the second strongest about was the one that I spun first, which was famous actors and actresses. And for some reason, I had in my head, no, I'm playing against David. I need to land on Disney.
Yeah.
What? It's one category.
But Clay, that's what your mind does sometimes in a match. In the pressure situation, like people can analyze it all day, but no one knows until you're in the heat of the moment. You're not a machine. Sometimes you're not going to go with the mathematical odds. Sometimes you're going to say, we're going for the Hail Mary pass. I want to land in Disney, like, and you're going to take it. I will say, and this is, again, people would have crucified this gameplay from me. If I had landed on Disney, I was 100% taking it. 100% taking it. Because I thought at the time, because I don't know if I could hang with your guys in your league, but I know Disney quite well.
And also the level that at the FCL was, I mean, at this point they were getting harder, but I don't think Disney had been landed on much. So I think
on one match previously, I remember. I can't remember who competed, but I remember I went 8 points out of 8 points playing along with it. And I was like,
and so I honestly, I would have been afraid if you had landed on Disney, because I just knew that the level of the questions were probably not going to be super deep yet.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing was with Disney, I'd made a conscious effort, because I always think you should try and make your strength stronger at times as well. So I was like, okay, if I do land in Disney, I want to make sure that I know my stuff, but like the Meet the Robinsons, the bolts and stuff like that, maybe the blank bits that I've got in my head, let's fill them in. I hadn't watched Princess and the Frog before I started in FCL. That was one that I hadn't watched, and now almost there is like on every like daily mix like imaginable that comes up for me. So
that's a fun song. Yeah.
Oh, such a good song.
It's great.
This is off topic. If they're going to do live action remakes, make the ones that should have had more of a following than they have. Remake Princess and the Frog. Oh my God. Can you imagine?
I do think that they're doing a Disney Plus series. I think it's just like gonna be following her with her restaurant. And honestly, I have always said I think that would have been a more interesting movie than the movie, because I love the character of Tiana.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of Prince Naveen. I don't think that he deserved her at all. But I love Princess Tiana. I think that she is an amazing character. In fact, one of the problems that I do have with the movie is they're like, don't focus on your career. You need to find love. I'm like, I feel like that's a backwards message, Disney.
Yeah,
I don't think
100%.
that's
There's shades of grey in there for sure, Disney. Like, really.
I've always said I would have preferred to watch a film about her just putting her restaurant together, and apparently they're going to do that.
They're going to do it.
Good.
I'll watch it. I'll watch it. I'm a sucker for it. But Paul Thomas Anderson again comes down. Nick Harley put it on the wheel and studied for that match, and then realized that Paul Thomas Anderson doesn't actually have that many films. So it's like...
he doesn't. But here's the thing: I've only seen 2 of them.
Right.
I've seen Punch Drunk Love, and I've seen There Will Be Blood.
Right.
That, and not saying that I don't want to watch them, or I just haven't. There's so many movies. It's hard to get to them. I honestly, he and also Wes Anderson, I've been meaning to get to both of their filmographies for a while. There were other things that I was also studying at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And like, that was the thing with studying, is like, they're always going to have weaknesses. It was just trying to hide them. But that was my biggest, like, round 1. I think you can tell in that match, like, I had a shit round 1. But in my head, I was kind of like, well, fuck it now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, here we go.
Yeah, you kind of go for broke. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was getting in a rhythm in that second round, I felt. Like, getting a bit of the swagger back, just like, oh, here we go. And then that mistake, like that, when not listening to the full question, absolutely just killed me again. I was like, no, why have I done that?
But see, I mean, you still ended up with a lead at the end of round 2, because I landed on Crime, which was probably next to Paul Thomas Anderson and Black Cinema, probably my lowest. Yeah, the third category I wanted the least.
Yeah.
I honestly probably would have been fine with John Candy, because I actually have an odd affinity for John Candy. When I was in the 4th grade, they were like, write a letter to a celebrity. And for some reason, the only celebrity I could think of was John Candy. So I wrote a letter to John Candy.
Love that.
Yeah. So I have an odd affinity for John. Not to say I would have known everything, but I think I would have done a little better than I did in Crime.
Yeah.
But yeah, you still end up with a 2-point lead. And then we go into round 3. You and I both hit our 2. I get my 3. And I think it was your 3 that you had an issue with. Do you remember the at least the category for that?
No, I think
no.
No, I did actually miss a disproportionate amount of 3s to 5s, and I remember missing who directed Mary Poppins Returns. That might have been this
match. Right. No. Because I did watch it. But of course, it's not coming up when I'm scrolling through it. I'm trying to scroll through it so I don't have to use the sound or anything.
No,
and it's not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not surprised I missed my 3. Because I always said, like, 5-pointers, I would pull. Just for some reason, I could pull a 5. I couldn't pull a 3 to save my life at times, Clay. It was an absolute nightmare.
Honestly, there have been times when I've heard 3s and I'm like, that's a 3? And then I hear the 5 and I'm like, your 3 should have been your 5.
Oh, 100%. I remember my favorite 5-pointer, my favorite questions that someone's missed in the showdown. It was do you remember when Janine beat Dan?
Yes.
Someone's 3 was, how many years had the bride been in a coma in Kill Bill? And Kill Bill was my favorite film of all time. So immediately I was screaming. I was like, 4 years. And then Dan's 5 was, what movie from whatever year starred David Carradine and someone else? And I was like, it's the Lizzie McGuire movie. I was like, it's the Lizzie McGuire movie.
Right, yeah.
I was like, so
no, I think that was Janine's 5. Was the Lizzie McGuire
that Janine's
movie.
5?
Yeah, I think that was Janine's 5. Yeah.
It was, but then you start thinking to yourself, why could I not get questions like this when I was playing?
Right? I remember once, and I specifically sent a tweet out and tagged PJ in it because I was like, whoever it was on the writing team that wrote the question about Peter Ostrom in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. The moment I heard the name Peter Ostrom, I just smiled because I love that movie. Like I know ridiculous details about that movie because I watched it 15 million times as a kid. Yeah. So I mean, unfortunately, the person I think that got that question missed it. But I was like, you know, I loved it because I got it, and that was like a piece of my childhood.
Exactly. That's always the joy of playing along. And the thing was, right, you got your 5, and I'm thinking, still every chance here. Clay Kickamiss is 5. It's
fine. Yeah, because you answered your 5 first, and I
answered my 5.
Question.
You got your last question, and then like, and the category is musicals, and I was just like, done. Game's over. He's won.
I mean, here's the thing, though. I have realized in the past few years that there's a lot of musicals that I know shit about.
Yeah.
So I honestly, I was like, okay, if they name because I had actually not long before that shocked the crap out of James Shimo because he asked me a musicals question that he was like, there's no way. And it was, I think, what year did Seven Brides for Seven Brothers come out? And it took me a second, but I was like, I believe that was 1954. And he was like, how the hell did you? I was like, do you know how many times I watched Seven Brides for Seven Brothers? I mean, deeply problematic movie. Don't get me wrong, but it is a fun watch.
Yeah.
And so I watched that movie a ton as a kid. And, you know, it's just one of those things. I don't know. I'm not phenomenal at release dates, but the movies that I know pretty well. Yeah. And so, so I was like, if it's about one of the ones that I know, then I'll get. And the moment that they said he's large, I was like, I got you.
Job done. Yeah. Job done. And here's the thing, right? Yeah. I think 5s are always like the biggest sort of pipe bomb you can put into someone's temperament with movie trivia, right? Because if your opponent gets a 5, automatically your brain's like, that's an easy 5. I knew that question. Right. How come they got that? I did not know the answer to your 5-pointer.
Did you know? Okay, see, because I remember I watched, your face looked like you knew and you thought it was over.
No, I just knew it was over because you had a musicals question.
I will say I have to publicly thank 80s All Over, Drew McWeeny and Scott Weinberg, because they introduced me to that movie. Had it not that I hadn't heard of the movie, but I hadn't watched it before I listened to that podcast. And they not only suggested that people watch it, but they also did a commentary track for it. So I watched that movie like 3 or 4 times.
Well, that's the message to Drew McWeeny. Me and you now have beef, all right? We're not friends because of that.
Okay, I don't usually clip anything out, but I'm clipping that out.
No, please.
Drew McWeeny.
Because someone might be like, "Oh, we'll do that match," and I'll need to run for the house. I'm like, no, I know more limits. No.
Oh. Great stuff. But yeah, then we finished up the match, and I was honestly, when I got the question, I was shocked because I was like, I'm about to win this. How the hell? And then we get, and honestly, our post-match interviews, I don't think were bad. I will say at the time, I was like, this probably is shit because I'm so thrown off by winning, but I did still try to. There was probably more of my personality coming through that promo post interview than there had been in any of the previous matches. Yeah, just because, I was just like, look, I know this wasn't our best match, but David's a phenomenal competitor. I usually play better than this. We just had a tough match and we scrapped it out. And here's the thing. It's not like, you had a bad match and I destroyed you, or I had a bad match and you destroyed me. We both had.
We both could have played so much better. Yeah.
That's the thing. It was an even match regardless, which to me is one of the reasons that I think the match is still fun and worth watching.
100%. And that's the thing about the Schmoedown, wasn't it? That the system, as long as people were sort of getting to their fives as well, the tension's there. And we did bring the tension. We brought the drama. The post-match, in hindsight, kind of wish it turned heel there. And I was waiting, because I remember being backstage. I was main eventing and someone else had went in the first match. And Brad had put the Skype chat to them, turn heel now. It might have been night. And I remember stalling and waiting for that message. I was like, let me launch into a tirade. Let me just say something like, the system's against me. You're all against me. The fans can go to hell. Screw all of this. Like, and make me quit or something like that. Like live on air, because
that would have been interesting.
Because it's tough, I think, when you're the babyface and you have sort of, my record wasn't terrible, but at that point I was 2-3, so it's not exactly championship contender numbers right there. You know what I mean? So let's reinvent, and I think that was what I wanted to do. My instincts were kicking in at that moment. But also, we just came out of this grueling match. It's now 1 o'clock in the morning, so it's like it's tough to like keep it up. Like,
no, I mean, that was. But you know what I hate, because in that post match, Steph is like, "Well, don't worry, this isn't the last we'll see of you," and unfortunately, it was. And I was like, "Oh, that sucks."
I know. Like, and listen, we can talk about what could have been as well. I just
I mean, we're kind of there now, because I mean, unless there was something else that you wanted to mention about any of your other matches, but
no, just to say everyone was great people again, and I firmly believe that. Like everyone was great people in the FCL. I had 3 things, Clay, I wanted to do the season after. I wanted a proper conclusion to the storyline with the European invasion and the Sinister Syndicate. So that Survivor Series match already talked about, to me, made perfect sense.
That would have been a phenomenal, like, even if it was just a, this episode is just this match.
Right.
That would have been a phenomenal event for the FCL.
And it would be something unique for the FCL as well. I think that it would give us something to really put our stamp on. So I think the system I had conceived would have been, you 2 players each side are decided randomly, and then the wheel decides whether they're playing 10 questions in singles, IG, or Star Wars. And we don't know. You know what I mean? So it could end up like me and Maxwell, Star Wars. You know what I mean? Like, we get
if I had landed on Star Wars against Sunny, I would have been pissed.
But you know what I mean? Like that's the sort of like thing that made it entertaining. And it was something along those lines of like, let's bring some sort of like tension to this, because I would have been like done as well, even against Shimo and Star Wars. Like, it would have worked the other way. I think. The other thing I wanted to do was go in. The teams division was talked about coming in.
Yes. Were you thinking about teaming up with Nozette? Because I know that you guys added him. Again, like I think during Warfare, right at the end, you guys also added.
Right at the end. I think that Nozette. The thing was, I would have loved to have teamed with Sunny, but I know Sunny was going to go into IG. So the question was going to be whether Sunny would want to play 3 divisions and may have been stretching himself too thin. So the idea of Nozette coming in, who was a great singles competitor, really took the game seriously. Like, Nozette wanted to win. Like, that man had a fire in his eyes and a hunger in his belly. And I loved him, but I knew he would have stabbed any of us in the back if it meant getting a singles title, which is also interesting, you know what I mean? He wanted the belt, that man. So he would have been a great partner because of that, you know what I mean? The other thing that I really wanted to do, me and Andrew Furtado basically wanted to go a full season storyline with each other.
That would have been phenomenal. Like, just like teasing the possibility of a match. You guys just
Yeah.
messing with each other kind of the
Well,
entire
that's the story we pitched. So I pitched this.
Yeah.
And Andrew was just having a baby as well, so he wasn't sure how much he would actually get to
We would
play.
actually, yeah.
So we would go around each other, feel antagonize his face, agree to a match.
Yeah.
And on the day, right before the match, Furtado would say, "Oh, by the way, this match is being contested under Furtado rules." And it's a Furtado rules match. And basically, it was all horror. It would become like a full horror match.
Oh.
So you're setting me up for a loss. Like,
yeah.
I know that I would have lost that match for the story because it's Andrew Furtado horror. Like, he's winning that match. Then I would Brad would sort the situation and stuff like that. Say he did put it in the contract, but David's getting his own back because Andrew, you need to face him in a Wizarding World match next. That's what's going to happen. But then the twist would be right before that match, Andrew would substitute someone in to play for him. So again, avoiding me.
Like an IG competitor or something.
An IG competitor, or even get like a Silverstreamy from the Schmodown or Chance Elliott, like someone really good at Harry Potter, like to make it a big match, right?
Right.
That would be the idea. And then eventually down the line, we do like straight up singles, me versus Furtado, and you can even do career versus career. Like, you could do whatever stipulation you wanted on it. But the idea was, like, we'd go, like, a full season, a big length of time.
Yeah.
Campbell versus Furtado. Because, like you say, who wouldn't want to work with Andrew Furtado? In terms of promos and character, that man was just, like, the most consistently entertaining person that I'd ever seen. Like, I remember him and Jindoyan. Do you remember their promo in the park where they traded eggs for DVDs?
Yes.
It's
like, who even thinks of this?
It's so stupid and it's so silly, but it made me laugh so hard.
No, like, that's great.
And him versus John Knight with his candy bars and all.
His whole shtick of doing Knight was no, that was
but that was the idea I thought coming off of it was I'm not going to be in a contention for a singles title anytime soon. And Andrew I think knew that he was the character player who also played movie trivia matches. You know what I mean? So it would have made sense
I
for
very
us
much was the same. I mean, I knew I had some decent knowledge, but I knew that my strength was going to be the character. Yeah,
exactly. So that's why I thought me and Furtado doing a full season story, which would have allowed Furtado to play twice in the season, just once doing horror, once in a blow off, and then I could go and do teams with Nozé or do the big Survivor Series style match as well. Would have made for such a good story. And that is what I wanted to do in season 2. I don't know whether it would have happened because I know that PLD and Brad they were all trying to figure out what the hell was happening. They didn't know. So I'm picturing them this like 12-paragraph idea of
this epic story.
Here's what I mean Furtado should do in season 2. And they're like, we'll let you know. Like,
it's like we're not sure we're coming back, but all right. I mean,
but I know Andrew was up for it as well. Like, it would have been so much fun.
That would have been great. Yeah. And I mean, I know that I definitely wanted to have a return match against you.
Yes.
You know, if not for nothing else to give you the chance to get your win back kind of thing. But
and
also
more promos.
Honestly, I was like, I didn't expect to beat him. This might actually end up being like some sort of rivalry. This might actually be like something we can get some distance out of. And unfortunately,
100%.
It was both of our last matches in the FCL.
I know. Can you imagine if we added if we did that 6-person promo, like the two factions head to head, against each other, chaos.
And then we also, you were thinking about entering the teams division. I was going to be entering with Maxwell.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, did you guys kick around? Did you guys kick around any names for yours? Because I think we were going to be some version of Mad Cow.
Yeah.
It's going to be our team name.
That writes itself, and it's brilliant.
Dude, when I have those guys on, we had all sorts of ideas for things that we were going to do with all sorts of things. It's going to be interesting. But did you guys have like any names picked out?
We probably would have been so boring and just went for European invasion. Like, if I'm being honest, like the name was there, like we were there, and we knew we were going to be the sort of team's representation. We might have tried to play on like some sort of Spaniard Scottish thing, like the Highlander, like because the Highlander is the Highlander versus like the Spaniard, isn't it? So it's like you could maybe do something there. You know what I mean? Like we would have got to something in the end, but no, because I think we hadn't finalized what the team's lineup was also going to be. You know what I mean? Like for sure. We were sort of like trying to play around with it.
See, I'm thinking of, is there a way to do a Spanish twist on Braveheart?
I don't know. Is the answer to that question. But whatever it was going to be, I think teams would have been like so much fun, because that was the one thing with the FCL I think we really wanted early doors.
Yeah,
like,
we all wanted. Yeah.
And it just never ended up, happening. The start, it was going to happen season 2, but with no season 2, teams was a big miss, especially for the Adams brothers. Like, they must have been desperate to get
I mean, I know Maxwell and I really wanted to play. Like, we were like, that's got to be the first teams match, right? The Mad Cow versus the Adams administration or whatever I don't think they ever announced what they formally wanted. I know that they shot down the Adams family. They were not going to be the Adams family. But yeah, I mean, there were just so many possibilities, and unfortunately it just didn't happen.
I know, and it's a shame, because also I think by that point people had become so sure of what they were doing and the places we were going to, and
the end of that season, I mean, granted, they were using kind of the same people a lot, simply because they were the ones that, number one, they were comfortable with, but also the ones that were available, things like that. But it was just we were really finding a rhythm there.
We're going on cylinders, and we were getting Peggy in. It was announced Peggy Gubbins was going to come in. The international players, we might have had some, move over to our end as well. You know, so it was going to be really interesting to see what had happened in season 2. But also, an FCL free for all should have definitely been on the cards of season 2.
They had so many things. I know that they had pitched a tournament at one point that really the only reason that didn't happen was because of availability. They just couldn't get enough players to say that they could do it. And I was like, I would have loved to be part of a tournament.
Yeah, because I said yes to the tournament. I was like, if there's a title shot at the end of this, absolutely can be a tournament.
Right? I mean, I think they were asking before I was even part of the league, but I definitely would have said yes.
Yeah, because
I mean, it's the same reason that we didn't have an IG champ, because they wanted to do an IG tournament, and we just not enough.
Nice, exactly. And I think the thing is, none of us have said we wanted to play Fishburne. Like, there's a good reason for it, and it's not that Travis wasn't a great character person. You would have great promos with him. But my God, was that man a beast? Like, by the end, he was like, just like, you're looking at his play and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, I will say there were definitely a few people that I wanted to see him play against.
Yeah.
Simply because of the play that we'd also, we never got Robert from,
late
to the party against Fishburne. And Robert, before playing Vanessa, was also undefeated.
Yeah.
And I cannot remember his name, but there was a guy that played like 2 matches in the FCL and then got scooped up by the
I've been trying to think of his name the entire time. I can't remember.
Italian guy. I remember that was a big part of his personality. But honestly, I was trying, because they scooped him up and then never used him. And I was like, can we get him back in the FCL? Because it'd be great for him to do some stuff. But
the one storyline I thought in my head about.
I'll have to go back and find his name at some point.
Yeah, if I was to play Travis, that is when I would sort of turn heel. Because the story there is, I'm down, like, this could have been me. Like
Sure.
this is the story that I wanted to tell, and you did it, and they love you. Why do they love you so much? And that's what you do.
That
And
would have been
that's
a great heel turn.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that would have been great. Whether I would have won, probably not, because Travis was on a whole nother level by that point. But I always
Yeah.
thought that if I was going to turn heel, Travis would have been like a great guy to
Yeah.
sort of do it with.
Yeah, no, I did a podcast with him, and I was like, just pick a movie for me that I've never seen. I was like,
Yeah.
just give me a list just to make sure there's at least one in there. He
Yeah.
sent me a list of like 5. I hadn't seen any of them.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, yeah, I'm glad I never played you.
Yes, this was the thing. And I think that the whole Travis was your baby face, who was like the pure baby face, pure as gold. You could build a league around Travis Fishburne.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because of that,
Yeah.
he was becoming our John Cena, without a shadow of a doubt, which was a great figure to have because we had so many people with like a good edge or crazy characters or like phenomenal. We were like burdened with phenomenal heels in the FCL. Like even the Flouse coming in, like the amount of heel talent we had in the FCL was like unbelievable. You're saying like Shimo as well. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Shimo is another guy. Like I know we talked about the 6-man story to play James Shimo one-on-one.
The stories that could have been told with Shimo are limitless.
Yeah. Because he was like not even terrifying because he wasn't terrifying, but he felt powerful. Like there was an inherent power and presence to James that was great. You know,
Sinister was the perfect nickname for him. It really was.
Yeah. And like I say, I could talk to the. I was going to say to the cows come home. It's too cheesy.
I know. I know. Honestly, sometimes those puns just come without you really having to think about it. Yeah.
About the stories we could have told and the people that we had in that. Like the one thing that I remember, I always did want to go to the MTS, like, and do the MTS run. Like, if that was always a goal still of mine.
Sure.
Purely because I would have loved to have played Nick Harley if they ever did the UK live event for the Schmodown.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have had Nick just say, I'm coming to London, I'm going to play someone, and then I could play Nick live in the UK home soil. Because the only sort of UK, they had, who was it? Kim Taylor Foster? That, she was like the only other UK player like in the Schmodown at that point. So if they did want to have sort of home soil talent, I would have loved to have represented in that way. And to get that return match against Nick, that was the big dream that I had in terms of movie trivia.
Honestly, I had the same because one of the places that they were saying, we're going to start live events back up, one of the places they mentioned was Atlanta. Yeah. I live in Atlanta, and I was I will say I'm not going to go far into it, but I got myself in a little bit of trouble trying to pitch a match.
Really?
But I really wanted to play the Flouse because I was just like, the intros to that match alone would have been worth everything else. Even if the gameplay wasn't phenomenal, I feel like the introductions, the entrances to that match would have been ridiculous.
Make it an FCL showcase as well. Like, that was the thing. And I'll never criticize like the way the decisions people made, because I don't know what the behind the scenes was, the powers that be, that eventually everything went under. But I wish we got a bit more of an FCL crossover onto the main Schmodown to try and get the brand out there a bit more. Like even the free for all, it was only the Flouse that ended up in the free for all. Even if we had another couple of FCL folks in the free for all, the first year, the digital free for all year, I think that would have been
a great place. I mean, at the time though that the free for all came out, it
would have been week 6 or 7.
Would it? Because I thought it was like in March. It was like in March. I think it was before we even debuted.
Maybe.
Yeah. which by the time they did the next free for all, it was in person. So
and then we had
digital
Travis and all that show up, like with the belt and stuff, which was nice. You know what I mean? Which was always good to see. I was always still rooting for FCL people. That's like, there's Travis, there's Wingblade, there's
I was so excited when Wingblade and Travis showed up. That was phenomenal.
Survivor was
great
like
stuff.
You know, it was great stuff. But alas, what could have been?
What could have been indeed. Well, we do have one last segment here. We like to talk about what are you doing now? I know you've mentioned it a little bit, but go ahead and let people know, we don't have to end immediately, but just like where they can find you, what you're doing right now. Give us, let us know about your projects that you got.
Yeah, so professionally, I'm freelance in TV, so currently working in a development team, just coming up with TV shows and helping develop TV shows, which is fantastic and brilliant. Also, you can find the FT podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Check us out, Spotify and stuff like that. We do all our shows over there. My short film, if you go to my Instagram, find my short film Chapter, which I'm very proud of. You can have a look at that as well there. And I'm just trying to I'm just keeping going over here. I'm just, loving life. I'm still writing. I love movies. I still go to movies like twice a week if I can. Go to the cinema. So I'm always going to be. I'll be waiting for that bat signal one day. If ever the day comes that FCL 2.0 comes around.
I was about to say, I just about everyone that I've talked to has said the same thing. That if something ever happens, no matter how small it is, give us a call and we'll
but also I say this to you: anytime you want me to do some calling, you're on a match, you let me know about it, because it's always fun to come and watch. And the guys that you've got over there in your league, the Movie Battles League, they're all they're really great. And I'm always so impressed every time I come on and see the stuff they're pulling.
I mean, I will say, not to make this about me all of a sudden, but we are on a hiatus right now, simply because I write all the questions, I do all the editing, and it's a lot.
It's all work.
It's tough. So this year I've decided to focus on my podcast, which you will be getting some invites for some of those.
You give me a check. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. We've got Discussions, our Disney podcast, where we kind of go into like the silly little details of Disney films. And joke about stuff like that. We also have Nostalgia Cal, where we talk all about television or film from our childhoods. We also have the Flying Cows movie list, where myself or a guest introduced to the other a film that the other has never seen before. We also have the Academy, which is coming back, which is basically a small panel where we are reviewing the quote best films of a particular year, and then deciding what we would choose as the best picture for that year. We are this year doing 1930. So some interesting stuff coming up. And then of course movie battles, and don't forget our Patreon exclusive podcast. The Patreon can be found at patreon.com/theflyingcow. But our Patreon exclusive podcast, Around the Worrell, where we talk all things Ernest P. Worrell. So
nice.
Some fun stuff that we're doing over there. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. And again, thank you so much for having me on. The opportunity to reminisce about the FCL has been a fun time, and chatting to you is always a delight. So,
I mean, I've been 100% open about the fact that half the reason I'm doing this is so that I can reconnect with, number one, meet some of the competitors that I haven't met before, but also reconnect with the ones that I, have talked to before. So, you definitely, I think you were like the second or third person that I messaged and was like, hey, when can you do this?
I love that.
Absolutely.
Well, I can't wait to see who else is coming up on this. FCL competitor always will have, the memories of that, but also I was a fan. I would watch every week of the FCL. So any
me
competitor
too.
comes on, I'll be there listening as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, again, thank you, David, for your help today. And thanks all of you for watching. We will be back next time I have a free weekend. And we will be talking to another member of the FCL for their take on how things happened there. But until that time, move.